And the topic that we're going to be talking about this afternoon is the best way to prepare for the coming Sunday law. So there's three main ideas that we're going to be talking about this afternoon. Three main ideas about the best way to prepare for the coming Sunday law. So the first question that we need to ask is there a Sunday law coming, and what is it going to look like? If you don't believe that something is coming, then you are going to struggle to prepare for that event. So that's the first question that we want to know. Is there a Sunday law coming, and what is it going to look like? So lots of people, they struggle to imagine or to understand, can we show from the Bible that there is going to be a Sunday law that is going to come? Now, there's a couple of simple Bible passages that we can look at so that we can know from the Bible that the Sunday law is going to come. One passage that we can look at is Daniel chapter 7, which teaches us about a little horn power. And that little horn power, if we study the characteristics in Daniel chapter 7, we find that that little horn power is the papal power, the papal system. And Daniel chapter 7, verse 25 tells us that one of the characteristics of that little horn is that it thinks to change times and laws. And we know that there's one law in the Ten Commandments that also has to do with time, and that is the fourth commandment about the Sabbath day. Then in Revelation chapter 13, where we talk a little bit more maybe about the present time or in the near future, then we find two beasts. The first beast is once again the papal power, and the second beast represents the United States. And so it tells us that the second beast, the United States, is going to make an image of the first beast. It's going to make an image of the papal power. So what does it mean to make an image? It means that the United States is going to make a law that enforces a religious duty. It's going to enforce and restrict religious duty, just like the papal power did in the past. So the United States will make an image of that beast. It will make an image of the papal power, and they will enforce and restrict religious duty. In Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 20, the Bible says, "And hallow my Sabbaths, and they shall be a sign between me and you." This is what God says. So what is a sign between God and his people? It's not the Sabbath day that is the sign. It says, "Hallow my Sabbaths, and they will be a sign." So the sign between God and his people is the observance of the Sabbath day. Not knowing when the Sabbath day is, not saying that you believe that this day is the Sabbath day or that day is the Sabbath day. The sign between God and his people is the actual observing, the actual keeping holy of the Sabbath day. That is what the sign is. And so the opposite of God's sign is the mark of the beast. And that would be keeping holy the first day of the week. So on the one side, we have God's sign, keeping the true Sabbath holy, not the false Sabbath. And on the other side, we have the mark of the beast, which is keeping the false Sabbath holy, not the true Sabbath. So what is this law going to look like? We need to understand that when we look at Isaiah chapter 58, verse 13, that keeping a day holy, keeping the Sabbath holy, is not just about your actions, but it is also about your words and about your thoughts. That is what sin is also about. Sin is not just about your actions, but sin is also about your words and also about your thoughts, the ideas that you entertain. So keeping the Sabbath is the same thing. Keeping the Sabbath, according to the Bible in Isaiah chapter 58, is not just what you do, but also the things that you talk about on the Sabbath day, and even the type of ideas that you entertain on the Sabbath day. And so the goal of Satan is for you and for me, who profess to believe in God, to honor the first day of the week and not the seventh day, not the Sabbath day of the week. That is his goal. He wants us to be transgressors of the commandments, because Revelation chapter 12 tells us that he is wrath, he's angry. The dragon was wrath with the remnant of the seed, and he makes war with who? With the people who keep the commandments. So his goal is for you to not keep the Sabbath holy, but to keep the first day of the week as a holy day. But even if Satan is able to get you in prison, you and me, we can still keep the Sabbath day holy even if we are in prison. Why? Because even though you are in prison, the ideas that you entertain and the words that you speak, you can still keep the Sabbath as a holy day. Satan cannot force you to entertain secular ideas in your mind on the Sabbath day. He cannot force you to do those things. On the Sabbath day, even if you're in prison and you cannot go to church and you cannot do outreach and all of these things, when you're sitting there alone in your prison cell, in your mind, from Friday sunset to Saturday sunset, in your mind, you can keep the Sabbath day holy, and God sees you as a commandment keeper. So even if you stop all secular work on Sunday, like the government requires you, but you still think about secular things, you still entertain secular ideas in your mind, then you are not keeping Sunday as a Sabbath day or as a holy day. And because Satan knows that God's people will never lie, so what Satan will do is he will ask God's people to tell him what they think, to say what they believe. Because if you lie, then you break a commandment of God. And so Satan will simply say, did you keep the Sabbath holy? Did you keep Friday sunset to Saturday sunset as holy? And if you say, no, I didn't do it because you want to avoid death or prison, then obviously you're a liar if you did do it. And so you'll have to be honest, and you can say, I do believe in God's commandments and I have to keep the fourth commandment. So I do want to keep Friday sunset to Saturday sunset as a holy day. And then they'll say, you are guilty. You are guilty. Or they can ask you, did you keep Sunday as a holy day? And if you say no, because that would be the truth, because on Sunday you're not keeping it as a holy day, then they'll also say you are guilty. So the Sunday law ultimately is about trying to change your mind, trying to change your convictions and your conscience. The Sunday law is about trying to get you to break God's law. That is what it's about. And we have this interesting statement in the Spirit of Prophecy in pamphlet 086, page 6, paragraph 3. It says, not only are men not to work with their hands on Sunday, but with their minds are they to acknowledge Sunday as the Sabbath. So the Spirit of Prophecy tells us that when the Sunday law is going to come, it's not just that they care so much about what you do, but also with your mind, they want you to acknowledge that Sunday is the Sabbath. So that's why they will ask you with your words, they will ask you, do you acknowledge that Sunday is the Sabbath day? Even if they don't look at any of your actions or anything like that at all, they don't know what's going on in your house at all. They don't know what's going on in your bedroom or alone on an island or anything like that. They will just ask you, do you believe that Sunday should be kept holy as a Sabbath day? And if you say no, then it's guilty. So if a Sunday law comes and they ask you to stop doing all secular labor on a Sunday, the Spirit of Prophecy says you can stop doing secular labor on a Sunday, because it doesn't mean that you are keeping the day as a holy day. Because in your minds and through your words, doesn't mean that you're keeping Sunday as a holy day. If they tell you to stop going to church on the Sabbath, then even if you stop going to church on the Sabbath, you can worship with your family at home, you can meet in your neighbor's house, you can have a small group, you can worship online. You can keep the Sabbath day holy, even when you are not able to go to church. Alone in a prison or on the island, you can still keep the Sabbath day as a holy day. You will only receive the mark of the beast when you consent in your mind that you should not honor Sabbath day, that you should honor Sunday. This is something that we should clearly understand. That is when we receive the mark of the beast. And we have wonderful counsel in the spirit of prophecy on what to do when a Sunday law comes and what it means to receive the mark of the beast. And I think it's very important for us to prepare, to read these things, to prepare. Because if you know that you are pregnant, it means that most likely a baby is going to be born. So you start to prepare some things for the birth of that child. If you honestly and sincerely believe that a Sunday law is coming, then it's very valuable for us to read what the spirit of prophecy writes about Sunday laws so that we can prepare, we can understand, okay, when a Sunday law comes, to what extent can we follow the law? To what extent shouldn't we follow the law? So the spirit of prophecy tells us, for example, that when a Sunday law comes, you don't have to go outside and mow the lawn and all of these things just to upset people. On a Sunday, you can do evangelism. You can have tent meetings or meet in buildings where you're teaching people about the Bible and about temperance, about health. So if we are wise, we can pass many difficulties without breaking God's law. And Satan's ultimate goal, like the spirit of prophecy says, is to change your mind. He wants your consent about this a Sunday Sabbath issue. And if you can't change your mind, that will ultimately lead to a death decree. So even if you're in prison, why do they still want to kill you if you're in prison? You're not physically doing something with your body to keep the day holy, but they know that in your mind you haven't consented to this idea that Sabbath is not from Friday sunset to Saturday sunset, and that's not the time you should keep it holy. And so a death decree will come. So they will not look so much at what you do and what you don't do, but they will simply ask you a question. Do you believe that you should keep Friday sunset to Saturday sunset as the Sabbath day, as a holy day, instead of Sunday? And if you are honest and you say yes, you are guilty. So that's my first point on how to prepare for the coming Sunday law. Is there a Sunday law that's coming, and what will it look like? Yes, from the Bible, from Daniel 7, Ezekiel 20, and Revelation 13, we can establish that there will be a Sunday law that is in direct opposition to God's sign. And this Sunday law is going to be about what? Satan wants to try to change your mind. He wants your consent. Do you keep the Sabbath or not? That's the question that will be asked. Not so much just looking at what you do and what you don't do, because Sabbath observance is much more than just that. It's about what's going on in your mind and through your words. Now, our second question about how to prepare for a coming Sunday law. Why do we disagree with a Sunday law that is coming? If the government makes a Sunday law today, and you call them and you tell them that you don't agree with this Sunday law, and they ask you, why, dear Armin, why don't you, maybe they're not going to say dear, but they'll say, Armin, why don't you agree with the Sunday law? Why are you unhappy with this Sunday law? Then what are you going to answer them? What is your answer going to be? Are you going to tell them, government, I don't like your Sunday law because my pastor said it's bad, or because my mom and my dad told me that a Sunday law is bad, so I don't like this law? Or we're going to tell them, because I believe in Ellen White, and Ellen White said it's bad, so that's why I don't like this law. I think we need to understand why we disagree with something so that we can explain our position clearly. If the government asks me to kill someone and I tell them I don't like the law, and they ask me why, then I can explain to them that the government's purpose is to protect people, not to harm or kill people. And so because killing someone else is wrong, so that's why I don't like it. So why don't we agree with a Sunday law? Some people say, I don't agree with the Sunday law because the government is forcing me to do something that I don't want to do. I think that maybe this is not a very good reason, because the government has always been forcing people to do certain things they don't want to do in order for them to participate in society. For example, the government has rules about tax, not just income tax, but land tax, inheritance tax, tax on the things that you buy in the store. And there's lots of people who don't want to pay tax, but whether you want to pay tax or not, seems like that doesn't really matter much. The government is going to force you to pay tax if you want to participate in society, unless you want to be in jail. The government forces me regarding the speed limit. The government says it's 120 on the highways. That's the way it is. Even if I want to drive 140, the government has a rule 120. If I want to export food to another country, the government has the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, that checks the quality of things. Even if I don't like it or whatever it might be, they force me to pass these things if I want to send to another country, or even if I want to sell in Big C or some stores like that. What about my passport? The government forces me to have a passport if I'm going to be in travel to another country, including visas and work permits and all of those things. So we understand that there's lots of things that the government forces us to do that we don't like to do. So telling the government that I don't like the Sunday law because you're forcing me to do something that I don't like to do, I don't think that's a very good reason. Another reason, people say that I have a freedom to follow my religion. And if you make a Sunday law, then I can't follow my religion, and everyone should have the freedom to follow their religion. I think this is also not a very good reason why. And let me explain to you why. Religious freedom has never been absolute. Absolute. People cannot just follow any religious belief that they have. If I have a religious belief that I should go walk around in Bangkok and smash all of the spirit houses that belong to Buddhist people, the government is going to stop me, just like they're going to stop the Muslim guy who maybe believes that he needs to blow up a church or something like that. If someone believes that, the government is going to stop them, and I can tell you that I'm very happy that the government is going to stop them. Or what if I say, I believe, my religious belief is, I had this dream last night, and my God told me that I need to sacrifice my wife and my kids as a sacrificial offering to my God. Do you think the government is going to say, yes, you have freedom of your religion, please sacrifice your wife, go ahead, we won't interfere? No, the government is definitely going to interfere. Or what if I say, my religious belief is that I need to marry my 6-year-old sister, even though she doesn't agree? This is my religious beliefs. My religious book tells me that I should marry my sister that's 6-year-old. I think the government is going to step in. So I think saying that I have freedom to follow my religion, that's why I don't like a Sunday law, I don't think that's a smart way of going about things. And I think that if we give a bad reason for why we don't like the Sunday law, then they will show you that your reason is not a good reason. And then when you listen to them and they start explaining to you about all of these things, like I'm explaining to you now, then you might start to doubt what you believe. Because we believe something and we have reasons why we believe something. And if people can undermine the reasons why we believe something, then it undermines what we believe. And so if you believe that a Sunday law is wrong, but you don't have the correct reason to explain it, and people show you that your reasoning is bad, then you might start doubting what you believe. And so I want us to understand the reason why we don't like a Sunday law. I want us to understand the reason why the Spirit of Prophecy and the Seventh-day Adventist Church will object to a Sunday law. And I think we have to understand the proper role of government. In Mark chapter 12, verse 17, the words of Jesus, if you have a red letter Bible, it will be in red. Jesus said, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. So Caesar has certain requirements, and God says we must give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. And Jesus says that God has certain requirements and that we must give to God what belongs to God. So we need to understand what belongs to Caesar that we need to give to Caesar, and we need to know what belongs to God that we need to give to God. And we need to understand the difference between these things. We need to understand what belongs to Caesar and what belongs to God. And if we don't understand the difference, I think that there's going to be trouble. I hope I'm wrong, but I have a very strong suspicion that there's going to be trouble if we can't separate between these two things. How can we separate between these two things? The 10 Commandments are split into two parts. The first 4 commandments is about our duty towards God. And the last 6 commandments is about our duty towards our fellow man or our neighbor. This is not my idea. It's not one of my friends' idea. This is an idea that we find in the Bible, and it's also an idea that we find in the spirit of prophecy. You can just go to Ellen White writings and you can search duty towards fellow man or duty towards neighbor. And if you search that and you see the search result, you'll find that it talks about the last 6 commandments. When it comes to the last 6 commandments, because this is about our duty towards other people, God has given the government authority in the sphere of how we relate to people around us, our neighbor, our fellow man. That does not mean that the government has or the government can force people to break the last 6 commandments against their will. But it does mean that the government has authority to make rules that promote the principles of the last 6 commandments, which is about loving your neighbor. So the government doesn't have complete authority, okay? The government has some authority when it comes to the last 6 commandments to promote the principles of the last 6 commandments, because the last 6 commandments is about loving people and protecting people. That's the authority that God has given to the government. That is the whole purpose of government. And so God has given them this authority. So in Romans chapter 13, you can read that chapter that talks about the government and how God wants us to respect government, the authority of the government, and follow what the government says. But then God, in that same chapter, God gives us the limit of the authority. And he quotes some of the commandments in Romans chapter 6 and Romans chapter 13. And in Romans chapter 13, you'll see that Paul only quotes from the last 6 commandments. He does not quote any of the first 4 commandments, because Paul understands that our authority or our obedience to the government only has to do with how we relate to other people. For example, do not steal from other people. The government has such a law, and that law is also found in the last 6 commandments. Or there's another commandment that's not found in the last 6 commandments, but the principle is there. The government doesn't want people to drink alcohol and smoke in public. Why doesn't the government want that? Because the government understands that that's bad for society. And that's a principle that we'll also find amongst, even though there's not a commandment in the last 6 that says don't smoke in public, the principle is there that smoking in public can harm other people in public. And so it's something that could endanger their lives, and that falls under the last 6 commandments. So the government can make a rule restricting people's ability to smoke in public. Or the speed limit. Driving above a certain limit is dangerous. It can endanger other people. Or if I want to send food to another country, sell in another country, then the government will check the quality, because it has to do with other people, with my neighbor, with my fellow man. Or maybe, like the current situation that we are in, if there's an infectious disease in the country that's causing lots of problems and it's spreading amongst the people and people are getting sick, then the government can ask you to be vaccinated if you want to come in contact with other people in order to lower the risk. So the government has authority from God to make rules for the protection and safety of society, but restricted in the sense of how it relates to other people. So even though the Roman Empire was very, very corrupt, and they treated people very, very badly, Jesus said that the people should still pay their tax to the Roman government. That is their duty. It's their duty, their responsibility to return tax to the Roman Empire, and how the Roman Empire uses that money is the Roman Empire's responsibility. God has given the government the right to collect tax from people so that they can use the money to protect the people. If they don't use money to do that, then that's their responsibility towards God, and God will hold them accountable for that. That doesn't mean that the government has unlimited authority, because they shouldn't be making rules that doesn't have anything to do with anyone else. if you don't ever come in contact with other people and you are not a risk to other people and you don't want the vaccine, then they shouldn't go there where you stay alone on your island without anyone else there and tie you to a chair and give you a vaccine. That is outside of the role that God has given to the government. That doesn't seem to have anything to do with anyone else, because you're staying there alone on an island and you're not coming in contact with anyone else. But if you are planning to go into public and meet other people, then they will make certain rules, and we need to understand those rules. Not because they want to restrict your personal belief, but because they have a responsibility to protect society. Also, so if they ask you to kill someone or to lie, then you don't have to do that, because that is the very opposite of what God has given them the authority to do, because we know that killing someone or lying is not what protects the safety of society. That's what makes society worse. So that's outside the scope. That's not promoting the last 6 commandments. It's going against the last 6 commandments. We need to understand how this relates to the first 4 commandments. The first 4 commandments is about our duty towards God, not to man. The government does not have authority to make rules enforcing or restricting the first 4 commandments. If I want to worship an idol, that is my own business. And the government won't even be able to define what an idol is, because I can worship a physical idol standing in my house, a statue, or I can worship money as an idol, or a car as an idol, or all of these things. And that doesn't have anything to do with other people, my duty towards other people. If I want to worship an idol, that's my business. Except if I believe that I should sacrifice my neighbor to that idol, then it affects other people and the government will stop me. Not because they have a problem with me worshiping my idol, but because they need to protect people from me wanting to kill them, to sacrifice them for my idol. So the government will tell me, yes, you can worship your idol, but don't harm other people, don't kill other people and sacrifice them to your idol. So if I want to keep Monday or Tuesday as a Sabbath day, that is my own business. Except if I believe that keeping the Sabbath day holy means that I have to kill someone. If Seventh-day Adventists believe that in order to keep the Sabbath day holy, every Sabbath we need to kill someone in church, otherwise we're not keeping the day as a holy day, then the government would stop me, not from going to church, but they would stop me from killing someone, because that is a responsibility that God has given them. Not because they have a problem with my Sabbath. They don't have a problem with my religious conviction, but they have a duty to protect people that I want to kill. So Satan understands this principle very, very, very clearly. So this is the following argument that Satan is going to make in the end times about Sunday law. And we find this in the Great Controversy. Satan is going to say, because you keep the Sabbath day, there's natural disasters. Okay? This is not a pastor that's saying this or anything like that. You can find this in the Great Controversy. God has already explained this to us, that there's going to be natural disasters, and Sabbath keeping people are going to be blamed for this. So your keeping of the Sabbath harms other people. But this is where the problem comes in with their argument. How is my Sabbath observance linked with natural disasters? So if the government says, Armin, you're not allowed to keep Sabbath anymore because you're keeping the Sabbath and there's natural disasters and it's harming other people. Okay? And I listen to them and what they're saying. Okay, I understand what they're saying. And now I ask them, how is my Sabbath observance linked to the natural disasters? The Great Controversy tells us already what they're going to say. They're going to tell us, because you honor the 7th day and not the 1st day, God is not happy about your disobedience. And so God is sending these or causing these natural disasters as punishment. That is the reasoning. So can you see how this argument is very different than the argument of believing that if you keep the Sabbath, you need to take someone to church and kill them? If you take someone to church and you kill them, that is a very direct thing that can easily be shown. Okay, you keep the Sabbath, and part of keeping the Sabbath is you need to take a knife and stab and kill someone. But believing that you keep the Sabbath because there's natural disasters and God is punishing you by sending these natural disasters, that argument is a different argument. That one is a religious argument. The first one is not a religious argument. It's an argument of protecting people by you directly causing harm. Saying that you are keeping the Sabbath is causing God to send disasters is a religious argument. And the government should not enforce religions, because then they are forcing their idea of God on the people. And there are many people in the country who don't have that same belief in God. They don't believe that God exists. So you can't be telling me that my Sabbath observance is making God angry by sending natural disasters that's harming people, if lots of the people, they don't even believe in this God. They might be believing in another God and they might be saying, well, because you're not keeping Wednesday as a holy day, so my God is angry. That's why we have disasters. And so for our duty towards God, the government shouldn't punish us for our duty towards God. God is the one who will punish us for our duty towards God. The first 4 commandments should only be punished by God, not by the government, the civil government. For transgression of the last 6 commandments, God has given authority to punish people. If you do something that harms other people, it can clearly be shown that that is true in the case, then God has given them authority to punish. Like if you're committing adultery, or if you're going around spreading disease, or if you're lying to people, or something like that. And so in the end time, if we have the correct understanding and reasoning to explain to the government why we don't like a Sunday law, because a Sunday law falls amongst the first 4 commandments, where tax and FTA and speed limits and all of those other things falls in under the last 6 commandments, the government is going to be convicted. They are going to realize that what they're doing is wrong. It is going to happen like that if we use the correct reasoning. How do I know this? Because during the time of Jesus, when Jesus was crucified, the government also realized that they had no justified reason to kill Jesus. Pilate said it himself in Luke chapter 23. And that was my devotional piece for this morning in Luke chapter 23, where Pilate, he told the people, I don't find any reason to kill this man. But who wanted Jesus dead? It wasn't so much the government who wanted Jesus dead. It wasn't Pilate who had this desire to kill Jesus. No, Pilate, he didn't really care. It was the people who wanted Jesus dead. In Luke chapter 23, you read Pilate, he washed his hands. He said, no, I don't have anything against this man. But the people were shouting, crucify him, crucify him. And so in the end time, the government, if we can use the correct reasoning to explain to them why we object to a Sunday law, the government will understand that a Sunday law is not justified to punish people because of this, but the government will have lots of pressure from the people to make a Sunday law, and they will allow a Sunday law, just like what happened during the time of Jesus. Pilate gave way to the pressure of the people, and that's why Jesus was killed, crucified. And so in the end time, you can read in the Spirit of Prophecy, which is available to all of us. We can go on the internet and we can read up about the Sunday law and about the end of the time, especially in last day events. You will see that the government will make the rule because of the pressure of the people. That is why the government will make the rule. It's not my idea or my friend's idea. From the Spirit of Prophecy, we know and understand that the government will make a Sunday law because of the pressure of the people. So it is not so much the government that wants you dead. It's going to be your neighbor. At this point in Earth's history, it's not that Satan is focusing so much on trying to get the government people to be against you or against your beliefs. Satan wants your neighbor to be against what you believe, because he's going to use the pressure from the masses to force the government to make a rule. That's what happened during the time of John the Baptist. King Herod, he didn't have such a main big issue with John the Baptist, but who had the issue? It was the wife had the issue, because John was calling out his sin, and so she was the one that wanted him dead. So the wife used the government power to enforce her decree. During the time of Elijah, Jezebel was the prophetess of Baal. She was the religious power, and King Ahab, maybe he didn't like Elijah. He didn't have major issues. It wasn't Ahab so much as Jezebel that wanted Elijah to be killed. It's the same thing that's going to be happening at the end of the time. It's your neighbor that is going to turn on you. It's your neighbor that is going to call for your persecution. And so it's important for us to understand the correct role of government. Very, very important. And my personal conviction is that is one of the reasons why God is allowing the situation in the world that's currently going on. I think that God wants his people to have a clearer understanding of the role of government. What are the types of rules that the government can make? What are the types of rules that the government shouldn't be making? So that we will be prepared that when the end of time comes and the government asks us why we disagree with the Sunday law, we will be able to explain to the government why we disagree. And our reasoning will be logical and based on the Bible and the spirit of prophecy, and we can stand firm on what we believe. And many government officials will listen to our reasoning, and they will be convicted. And I believe that many of them will actually join God's side. Many people will come out of the world. But we also know that the government as a whole will be persuaded by the pressure, not by reason. And so there will eventually be a Sunday law. So I really encourage you, for those of you who really want to be prepared, if you really love Jesus and you're taking these things seriously, I really encourage you to read A.T. Jones, who was the Adventist during 1888 and 1889 when there was a Sunday law movement in the United States. He was representing the Seventh-day Adventist Church in defending against the Sunday law. And he gave very good logical reasons why we oppose a Sunday law, even though A.T. Jones himself did not have problems if the government would make a mandate, for example, for a vaccine if you want to go into public. The man who defended against the Sunday law said he can understand why the government would want to make rules like that. So we must think very carefully. We must understand what belongs to Caesar, what belongs to God, what is the limit of the government's authority, and what are the things that belongs to God. This is very important for us to understand. So that's my second reason. If we want to prepare for the Sunday law, is we need to understand why we disagree with the Sunday law. Because the Sunday law is about our duty towards God, not to man. And the natural disasters that is being caused, they will say is being caused by our disobedience to God. And that is a religious argument. That is an argument about our duty towards God. And the government doesn't have a role in interfering with that. God punishes people when they transgress the first 4 commandments, not the government. Then my third and final reason for how we can prepare, the best ways to prepare for a coming Sunday law. How will I be able to stand up for what I believe in? During the Sunday law, you will need to be able to stand up for what you believe in. If you believe, for example, that eating pork is wrong, then you need to stand up for that belief. And you should not eat pork. Doesn't matter what, how people threaten you or anything like that, you should not eat that specific thing that you have an objection to. If you believe that adultery is wrong, you should stand up for what you believe in. You should not commit adultery. You should not be forced to commit adultery. The same with stealing and lying, even with the vaccine. If you are someone who believes that getting the vaccine is a sin, then don't get the vaccine. Stand up for what you believe in, even if other people might not agree with you. And even if maybe you are wrong or whether you're right, that's not the point. The point is, if you believe that getting the vaccine is a sin, then don't get the vaccine. Obviously, that doesn't mean that you should break the government's rules that they put in place to minimize risk and things like that. But if you don't want to get the vaccine and you're not going to be a risk to other people, then don't get the vaccine. Follow your conscience. Stand up for what you believe in. Stand up for what you believe in about the Sabbath, about marriage, about all of these things. But standing up for something requires sacrifice and surrender. Those two things basically go hand in hand. Sacrifice and surrender. What does that mean? It means that if the government asks me to do something that I believe is sin, and they tell me that they're going to put me in jail or fine me or kill me, it requires sacrifice on my part and surrender of my own ideas and what I think and what I fear in order to stand up for what I believe in and face all of those consequences. So you've probably heard lots and lots of sermons about denying self and about surrender and about all of those things, which is very, very important. Denying self, Jesus said, right? If any man will come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. Denying self, very important topic. And so is surrender. You will hear people say Christianity is all about surrender, denying self. And that's very important and very true. And so Jesus is the ultimate example when it comes to denying self and surrender. He's the ultimate example. Why? Because Jesus was willing to die for what he believed in. Not just willing, he actually did it. He actually died. And so during upcoming Sunday law, that is the same type of thing that's going to be required from us. Jesus was willing to die for what he believed in, and he did die for what he believed in, and we should be willing to die for what we believe in. So we need to look at the life of Jesus always. We know that Jesus is always our example in everything. We always want to keep our eyes fixed on Jesus. We want to look at Jesus and we want to know what lessons can we learn from Jesus so that we can also have that spirit of surrender and denying of self so that we can also be faithful unto death. So why was Jesus willing to die on the cross for what he believes in? It was because of love. Jesus died because of love, because he loved you and he loved me. And in fact, he even loved the people who were killing him so much that he was willing to die for what he believed in. It was all about love. And we saw that in our scripture reading as well, in 1 John chapter 3, verse 16. That laying down of our life, really standing up for what we believe in, it requires love. Surrender always requires love. Very simple way to illustrate this, to understand this, is marriage. When you are getting married, for those of you who are married, or maybe you're contemplating marriage, marriage requires surrender. It requires a denying of self. When I was not married, I could go where I want to go. I could eat what I want to eat. I could use all my money on the things that I wanted or needed. I could just talk with lots of people and things like that. I don't have to tell anyone what time I'm coming home and just a whole bunch of things. I'm not going to give a whole list, but I can just tell you that marriage requires lots of surrender and sacrifice. After I got married, I'm sharing my income with my family. I'm telling my family where I am. I have a responsibility towards them in that regard. I don't just talk with any women and start relationships with them. There's just lots of things that has changed. But you know what? On my wedding day, and this is true, you can ask the people who were there, and that's why they were there, so they can testify that what I'm telling you is true. That's why I encourage you to try to have as many people as possible at your wedding so they can testify to everything that you say there on that day. I cried at my wedding. And it's true, there's a video, so I can also show you. I cried at my wedding, and my wife also cried at our wedding. And even the guy who was doing our wedding, he was also crying. And my dad cried and my mom cried, and there were probably lots of people. I can't give you a list of everyone that cried. But let me tell you the reason why I cried. I didn't cry because I was thinking, oh no, now I have to share my income with this lady. Now I have to stop talking to Sally and Jenny, and now I have to tell people where I go, and oh, now I have to sacrifice so much. My mom and my dad and my wife and the guy doing the ceremony, they weren't crying because they were thinking, oh, sacrifice. surrender. Now it's going to be a terrible life. The reason why I cry, okay, I'm not going to say the reason why my wife cried. You probably have to ask her, but I presume it's the same reason why I cried. I cried at my wedding day because I knew that I'm making one of the best decisions in my life. I knew that I love my wife so much that I'm willing to surrender those things. I'm willing to share my income with my family. I'm willing to stop talking, flirting with Sally and Jenny and all of those things. I don't mean that before you're married, you should be flirting with lots of women. I just mean that I think you understand what I mean. Just that's type of restriction that comes with marriage, right? That I cried because I loved my wife and I was willing to do all of those things. I was willing to make all of this surrender and sacrifices and all of these things because of love. This is a very important lesson that we need to understand. And the same is also true when it comes to Jesus. If you love Jesus, it's going to be a lot easier for you to make sacrifices for Jesus. If today I was preaching to you about temperance, about the health message, and it's very difficult for you to make a decision to do these things, it might be that there's a love issue. It might be. When you hear a sermon about returning a faithful tithe, sharing your income with God, and supporting the church through offering, or if you hear a sermon about sharing your food with someone that's hungry or your clothes with someone that's naked, if those things upset you a little bit, then maybe there's a love issue. I think that I'm willing to sacrifice some things for my wife because I love her. And I think that I'm willing to sacrifice some things for Jesus because I also love him. And I think I was willing to sacrifice those things for my wife because I knew that it will make me happy and that it will be good for me. And I think that when Jesus asked me to sacrifice some things, if I also understand that it's good for me and it will make me happy, I will also be willing to sacrifice those things. Now, if you love someone a little bit, I think you're going to be willing to sacrifice a little bit. I think if you love someone a lot, you will be willing to sacrifice a lot. So this is the crux, the main idea of my sermon today. If you want to be ready for the end of time, for Sunday law, you need to love Jesus more. And how do we love Jesus more? People will say spending time with Jesus, and they will say that is reading your Bible and praying. I think when you pray and when you read your Bible, you are spending time with Jesus. But I don't think that is the only way, or maybe perhaps the main way to spend time with Jesus. I think the main way to spend time with Jesus is to spend every single second of every day with Jesus. And how are you going to do that? When you read those things in the Bible, when you apply it to your life and you actually do them, that is how you spend time with Jesus. Not by reading those things and not doing them. When you read them and you do them, that is when you spend time with Jesus. So last night, for example, the church where I have my church membership, I'm out at that church, we went to the homeless people on the street and we gave out food and all of these different things. When I read in the Bible about someone giving, about Jesus feeding people, that touches me. It really touches me when I read in the Bible how Jesus feeds people. It shows me that he loves people. But you know what also touches me? And maybe touches me even more when I follow that example. When I read how Jesus feeds people and I go and I do the same. So last night when I went to the homeless people and I'm feeding the homeless people and I'm talking with them, trying to figure out why they're on the street and what's the issues that they are facing, that touches me deeply, deeply, deeply. It touches me to, like I cannot explain to you how much it touches me. Much more than just reading a story and not doing anything about it. Because what you see, what you do, is going to impact you a lot more than just what you hear. If I tell you that I can fly and you read a book about someone explaining how they saw me flying, it's going to be a lot different than me telling you I can fly and then flying. If I was suddenly to fly now here on this Zoom call, I'm sure that you're going to be amazed. You're just going to be shocked a lot more than someone coming here and telling you, I saw Pastor Armin flying yesterday. And so what am I saying? If you want to love Jesus more, you need to love more. By loving, you will love more. Jesus says in John 14:15, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. But then in the very next chapter, in John 15, verse 10, he says, if you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love. So Jesus, it's almost like he's making this circle thing. If you love him, you will keep his commandments. And if you keep his commandments, you will see that it's good for you and for other people. And so you will love him more. And because you love him more, you will want to keep his commandments more. And when you keep more of his commandments, you realize that those things are good for you and for other people. And so you love him more. And because you now love him more, you want to do even more of his commandments. And so there's this cycle. By loving more, you will love more. That's how it works. Not just in your relationship with God, but even your relationship with people. Even in your marriage. If you're struggling in your marriage today, you feel like the love is gone. The little love that's left. Use that little love, and your love will grow. Love grows by loving. Gospel workers, the spirit of prophecy tells us, the lesson that in helping others, we ourselves receive help must be urged upon young believers continually by precept and by example, that in their Christian experience they may receive the best results. Do you want to receive the best results in your Christian experience? Then help other people. If you help other people, you will receive help. If you love other people, you will love more. That is the principle. In Gospel Workers, just the previous page, 198, the Spirit of Prophecy tells us that a working church is a growing church. The members find a stimulus and a tonic in helping others. I don't know the condition of your church. Maybe your church is a thriving, healthy, happy church. But I can share with you a principle from God's word. God says that if you want your members to have a stimulus or a tonic, where are they going to find it? In helping other people. Not just in reading what Jesus did during prayer meeting or devotion or during sermon time, but reading what Jesus did and then go and doing the exact same thing. And if your church members are following that example of Jesus, your church is going to be a growing church. If you work in your church, you will grow. Just like in the gym. For those guys, you want some big guns? You want some big muscles? How are you going to get those big muscles? You use the small muscle that you have. And you go to the gym and you start bench pressing that 40 kgs or whatever you can do. And as you do that 40 kgs, your muscles grow stronger. And you put up the weight and you're hitting 50, 60, 70, 80. And so your muscles start to grow. The same is true with love. When you look at Jesus dying on the cross, it awakens love in your heart when you know that someone is willing to die for you. And then you take that little bit of love that God places in your heart and you exercise that love. And if you exercise that love will grow. The Spirit of Prophecy, Ellen White tells a story. This is not my story, not my friend's story. It's a story that Ellen White shares. She shares the story of a man who was walking in the snow. And it was extremely cold in the snow. It was so cold that the man realized he believed that he was going to die. He's going to die in the snow. It's too cold. And so as he almost kind of made up his mind that he's going to die, he saw someone else also walking in the snow. Someone else that was also stuck in the snow. And he kind of, probably felt sorry for that other guy. And so he decided, okay, I'm going to try to help that other guy. And so he went to that other guy and he started helping that other guy. And as he was helping that guy, carrying the guy and helping the guy, after a while, when he looked around, he realized he came to a condition, an area where it was safe, where both of them were safe and they're not going to die. What is the lesson that God teaches us through this story? By helping others, we help ourselves. The spirit of prophecy also tells us that we overcome by helping other people to overcome. It doesn't mean that if you are struggling with pornography, you must try to help someone else with pornography. It means that if you struggle with one specific thing that's different than what someone else is struggling with, then you guys can encourage each other and work together and share with them principles that you've used in overcoming maybe the thing that they're struggling with, so that they can overcome in that moment what they are struggling with. And they can share principles how they have overcome something that maybe you are struggling with. And so we grow together, and by helping others, we help ourselves. By loving, we will love more. The same is true with faith, with trusting God. The more you believe, the more you will believe. Faith grows like a mustard seed. When the disciples asked Jesus, increase our faith, Jesus told them, you must have faith as a mustard seed. He never said you must have faith as small as a mustard seed. That is not in the Bible. That's just a made-up story. He said you must have faith like a mustard seed. What is the type of faith that a mustard seed has? A mustard seed grows. It starts out very, very small, but it takes advantage of all of the things around it, the sunlight and the rain and the weather, all of these things, so that it can grow very, very quickly, and it becomes like a bush. It doesn't become a big, massive tree or something like that, like people tell you, but it becomes a reasonably bush, something compared to the size that it was. It grows quite quickly. And so Jesus says, your love and your faith can grow very quickly if you exercise love, if you exercise faith. We want to be ready to face a Sunday law, to stand for truth. How are we going to stand for truth? If we're willing to surrender self, to die for Jesus. And you're only going to be willing to die for Jesus if you love Jesus. And how do you love Jesus? By loving. The more you love, the more you will love. So these are my 3 principles in summary for our lesson for today. Best ways to prepare for an upcoming Sunday law. Number 1, is there really a Sunday law coming, and what is it going to look like? Yes. The Sunday law is coming. We can see it from the Bible, from Daniel chapter 7 and Revelation 13 and Ezekiel 20. And Satan is going to try to change your mind about the Sabbath. He wants your consent, not just your actions, but your words and your thoughts. He wants to change that. He's going to ask you, are you keeping it or not? And if you say yes, you're guilty. Doesn't even matter what you do or not. Our second lesson is, why do we disagree with the Sunday law that's coming? Not because they're forcing us to do something. They're forcing us to do many things. Not because they're restricting our religious freedom. They're restricting lots of people's freedom that harms other people. The reason why we disagree with the Sunday law is because it falls under the first 4 commandments that has to do with our duty towards God. And God punishes people who disobey the first 4 commandments, not the government. The government has authority to punish people who break the last 6 commandments. And then our third point for this lesson, how can we prepare for Sunday law, is how will you be able to stand? By surrender. And in order to surrender, you need love. If you don't love Jesus, you will not pass the final test. It's always been about love. From the very first beginning, it's always been about love and about faith. If you really want to love Jesus more than anything else, by loving, you will love more. That is how you love. By using the little bit that you have, exercising it, it will grow more. Just like when you go to the gym and you exercise your muscles, it will grow. So if you use a little bit of love that you have, it will grow. You read the Bible about what Jesus does. Don't just let the story of Jesus touch your heart, but allow Jesus to come into your heart and follow his example and do the same thing. And your life will be changed. You'll have the best results in your Christian experience. Amen.